Hello, I am Tina Perry, and this is my podcast. The name of this podcast is Tina's Corner Podcast. And the goal for this podcast is to, first of all, we have deaf, hearing, deaf-blind consumers. We also have both deaf and hearing interpreters. And those persons, as a group, our goal is to get them to work together. The interpreter's responsibility is to make sure that whatever is being said and whatever is being heard, that information is shared. I'd like to welcome Debra. Hi, Debra. Hi, Tina. First, let me introduce Debra. She's obviously deaf, and she has 5 children. Wow. You're a good mama, Debra. Well, I hope so. Debra is a deaf interpreter and a college instructor. Now, Debra is a deaf interpreter and her goal is to become certified. She works in different settings and with different persons, such as people who are deaf-blind. She does pro-tactile, Nepal interpreting. I can't wait to hear about that. And she is an SSP for people who are deaf-blind, and also works in the college post-secondary setting as an ACF, which is an annually contracted faculty member. She teaches ASL there as well. Debra has a degree from NTID. She has an AAS, and from RIT, she has a degree, a BFA, a Bachelor of Fine Arts. Well, Debra, you have a lot of accomplishments. You're pretty awesome. Well, I try to. Debra, I would like for you to give us a little bit of about your history as far as religious or spiritual interpreting goes. Can you tell us first about what type of experiences you had working in religious settings? Yes, I sure can. Thank you. I have interpreted for church off and on, and I would say for nearly the last 4 years, I have been a faithful interpreter for people who are deaf-blind. It's pretty rare that there are no deaf-blind parishioners. We usually have anywhere from 1 to 3, but on average, probably 2, but it can go as high as 4. If the consumer needs a deaf interpreter, it's because I am experienced and I have been trained, they will put me, or I will put me in, I will work with them individually. Are you the only interpreter there, or are there other interpreters as well? Well, yeah, I generally am the only one. Now, I have taught others. They try to help out working with people who are deafblind. Obviously, is very exhausting work. Yes. So I have been trained, and there is another person who is pretty good. And so we do share the responsibility. And others have tried. Maybe they give me a break and are able to interpret during that time. Another example, there is a deafblind gentleman and his wife is deaf. And, she just kind of draws the line that she doesn't want to interpret. And that's understandable. So what I try to do is be respectful of that. Do you only interpret in churches? Do you do weddings, funerals? Tell me what other settings you may have done what we consider religious interpreting. Well, most of my experience comes from church interpreting. Now, as far as weddings go, there's one that's coming, but unfortunately because of COVID, that put a stop to things. I have done a few funerals but most of the time I'm in the church setting. If there's an event going on, such as a picnic, fireworks, any type of event like that, maybe a fundraising event, I will interpret in those particular settings as well. Now, I understand you work in church settings, but while you're in the church setting, are there other things that you will do, such as Bible studies? What are those? Yes, maybe women's groups, Bible studies, and also men's groups if needed. What else is there? Sunday evening, Wednesday evening events that go on in the church. Those are other things I may interpret. Generally things like that. Now, sometimes after church, there may be some kind of a special presenter or presentation, and I will stay and interpret those as well. From your experience, do you believe that an interpreter, before accepting an assignment, should know their Bible? Do you think that's a requirement? Just to let you know, you're freezing up there, Tina. Now, this is my personal opinion. Yes, I believe that they should. Now, I don't think they should know the Bible in depth, of course, but I think they should have a basic understanding of the Bible. Now, as for myself, I don't know everything about the Bible, but I do know that, I know the books of the Bible and what they're about. I think it's good to be aware of what the Bible is about. If not, it's just really too hard to interpret in that setting. And now that's my opinion. Are you aware what's going to happen before you interpret in a setting? Do you ask for materials beforehand? Yes, I try to do that. I may ask for their sermon. What are they going to cover? Chapters and verses, particularly scriptures, maybe even some particular signs that they do. For example, this is the sign for Moses. Or, particular scriptures, Psalms. I'll ask what they use. Now, each pastor is different, so I will ask them specifically. Sometimes the pastor will change their message at the very last minute. And that's happened to me in a special situation. Maybe something came up, and then before you know it, they changed their entire sermon. It's like, oh my gosh. So they let me know, and that's fine. That's all good. Now, songs. Fortunately, I do have a book that I follow. It's religious signs for music, and I may peruse that, hymns, songs, so that I'm aware of those signs and what's going to be said. That's very helpful. Did you buy that book, or how did you get that? Yes, I bought that on my own. I did. I bought that on my own. Religious hymns, and I've got other resources like dictionaries. I also have bought Bible word signs. It's a dictionary. I buy those when I find them to keep them in my library, which is very helpful. So I may ask the pastor, what is it that you're going to be covering? What's your message going to be about? And so then I will go and kind of condense that information, because the Bible is very specific. So there's a lot of information that I may kind of put in the burners, to just kind of have that information in case they bring it up at the last minute. Would you mind giving me the names? You don't have to give me all of your resources, but maybe give me some information. So for those who are watching, we'll be able to access those information and purchase them for their own libraries. I know a lot of times I may ask somebody for a sign, and then I come to find out there's many choices, many different signs for a particular word. Yes, there are. But the important thing is to be able to match your own consumer and to suit their needs. That is important. Now, do your consumers, are they involved in the message? Are they get involved in the sermon or whatever? Are you one to try to get them, encourage them to be involved? Well, I empower my consumers, the people who are deafblind or the deaf person. I empower them. I say, look, they are asking us to be involved or for them to be involved. They can give a testimony or whatever they want to do, but I allow them to make that decision. I let them know that it's an opportunity and they make the decision as to whether or not they want to do that. And everybody, they're independent. This is what they want to do. I do what I want to do. They do what they want to do. I'm not going to put my wishes or force them to do anything. I tell them what the pastor is saying and let them know. And if I say, the pastor is asking everybody, and if they want to, they can go forward, and I will follow the consumer and do whatever they ask to do, and maybe even follow them up to the podium or whatever. Sometimes they want to stand up and do the songs as well, and I'll help guide them in that area. So if they do want to get up and give a testimony or share, do you have hearing interpreters there that will be able to do the voicing? Yes. Well, fortunately, the pastor of the church that I go to, his wife is hearing. Oh, yes. So she is hearing and she can do the voicing. Yeah. So we're fortunate in that aspect. So if we get into a situation where we need that, we can always get it figured out immediately. Yeah. Quick on your feet. Yes, that. Let's just say an interpreter's offered a job to work in a church setting and they take it, but although they aren't really of the belief of the church, they don't necessarily have the same type of belief. Do you think they should accept that assignment? Well, that can be kind of sticky, because if that person is able to draw boundaries and show respect to what's being said, the beliefs or whatever is going on. But if they cannot, and they just seem to get fuming mad or disagree with what's being said and tell the deaf consumers like, no, what they're saying is not true, then of course they should not accept that assignment in that church. It does happen, and this has happened to me, where I had an assignment and it just seemed like it was a non-religious assignment. And after showing up, I find out that they start to pray, or maybe it becomes a religious assignment. And it's like, oh, that's a little awkward. What do you do with that? Yeah, it's happened to me in Nepal with doing Nepal interpreting. Their religion is considered Hinduism. And this is the sign for that. And that's happened to me, where it was like, oh dear. And I say nothing. I step back and show my respect. I'll interpret whatever I can. Sometimes when they speak, I don't understand their language. But I do my best to let them know what's going on. But I show my respect. That's their life. That's their culture. And whatever happens, happens. And that can happen from time to time. That did happen to me one time where I just felt like, oh my gosh, I wasn't ready for this. I may not necessarily have agreed with them, but I do my best to keep my, composure and not say anything until next time. I make sure, if I think I'm going to have that same situation, I'll ask, are you going to be doing this and that? Because then not take the assignment. It happens. You never know when you go into a hospital setting, maybe somebody's about to die, the family will get together and pray, but things like that can happen at the last minute. So I believe it's a good idea to always ask. You just never know what will happen in any situation. I just do the best that I can until next time. Yeah, sometimes you could be in a courthouse. You just never know, in a court setting, and I'll be working with those and doing Nepal interpreting, and they get together before the court or whatever and pray. And I will again stand back and show my respect. And then once that's done, they will then all, as a group, go into the courtroom. So you got to be prepared for the unexpected. You are absolutely right. And keep your boundaries and show respect. Don't say anything. Don't let anything be seen on your face at all. Good point. Sometimes the interpreter will ask me, or even for myself, should I charge when I'm working in a church setting? Can I charge, or do I have to volunteer? Are there any particular rules for that? I mean, I don't know if there are. Maybe you're not aware of that. Well, nowadays everyone is in need of money, obviously. I mean, that's a given. But then in my upbringing, what I have learned as a Christian, and again, my grandfather was a deacon. And I have seen many things happen in situation, and I'm of the strong belief that one should volunteer. And that's just how I am. That's my belief. I believe that, you should be wanting to help. After all, we are God's people, and that we need to help each other. So again, that is my personal opinion. That's my view. I believe money is considered the root of all evil. And I would just rather do it from the heart to help out the best way I can, because I know that it will come back to me. I know that. So yeah, it just makes sense. Do you think? Yeah. But let's say something like a funeral, a wedding, or something like that. Do you think that the interpreter should charge that for those services? I know interpreters who's watching, this is your decision. We're just giving an opinion. We're not saying whether or not this is right or wrong. It's just how this person believes. So if you want to charge for those services, absolutely do as you wish. But what about weddings and stuff? Because I can tell you weddings are not just a 15-minute service and that's it. There's a lot of preparation as far as music, rehearsals, dinners. Do you charge for all of that? Again, it depends upon who you're doing it for. Yeah, now I have yet to interpret a wedding yet, but I know that one's coming here in the near future. So I don't know. As far as funerals go, again, this is just my opinion. If they offer to pay, what I do is I take that money and donate it to the church. Now, and that's how I handle it. If they want to buy my meal, and I'm fine with that, I'll take that. But as far as funerals go, I don't know. Sometimes they're unexpected, and weddings are a little bit different. So yeah. So you can be paid, yes. Yeah, my husband's a pastor, and there's a lot of times where maybe a funeral is taking place and the funeral director is the one that's in charge of all the fees, especially for the pastor, for the interpreter. They have all that preset. And sometimes I've interpreted where they give me a check and I didn't even know I was going to get one. So a lot of times they'll take care of that, where the funeral director makes sure all the people that need to get paid take care of it and let the family know, here's the services that the family needs to pay for, whatever. Yes. Yeah, that's happened to me. When my father passed, all the people were being paid, and I knew that was being taken care of by the director and the persons that were interpreting. That happened to me in April. Last April, I let the funeral director know who needs to be paid as far as the interpretation. Even though the interpreters didn't want it, I said, no, you please take this. That was my wishes. I felt that they needed to be paid for those services. So do you think, I hate using that word religious or religion. It sounds so rigid. I don't mean to make it sound religious, but for this podcast purposes, we'll use that. Do you think both religious and non-religious assignments are equally as important? Because sometimes people can think, oh, it's just church. It doesn't matter if you make mistakes or whatever. What's your opinion on that? My opinion is that all assignments are equal. I mean, if you want to be involved, that's fine. But if you're just like, it's just church, I'm just going to go in and do however, I don't believe that's, I don't think that's very respectful. I don't think you're meeting the needs of the client with that kind of an attitude. You know, this is not about you. This is about your consumer. You need to approach them, and go in and let them know. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing as going to a hospital or any other setting. It's not one is more important than the other. I think they're all equally as important. I think that's a good point. I think sometimes people think church is just, no big deal. Why do people even go to church anyway? So what? But most of the people who go to church are very serious about their belief, and that's their time with God or whatever. And I think it's, they take it quite seriously for us to think we can just go and do whatever. And I think that church religious interpreting is very challenging and difficult. I think it's the hardest of all interpreting, as far as the words, the Bible, the music. Oh my gosh, in 1 hour, you might encounter many different types of interpreting. And sometimes the pastor goes on and on. Yep, that's what my husband does. That has happened to me. Yep, they just go on, and I have to keep my composure. But I know how my pastor is, so I'm prepared for that. Yeah, and I will go in ahead of time. I show up 1 hour before the service starts. I will go to the pastor and ask for any changes, any last minute changes. I will take a look and see who's already there. If I know sometimes we have unexpected visitors, maybe a new person is coming to the church for the first time. I'd like to know those things. I get everything set up, like where I'm going to sit, have a pillow for my back, because there's a lot of forward moving and backward moving and stuff. I just want to make sure everything is set up beforehand. And once it is, I'm ready to go. I like that you say you show up an hour before and are prepared to stay longer, even though sometimes you may think this is going to be done at 11, that goes on to 11:30. That way you're not sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, when's this going to be over? You are mentally prepared for if the assignment goes over. And I like that you are prepared. That's great advice. Debra, I have one more question. Do you have any one thing, and I'm sure you have many things, but any one thing, one good piece of advice for those who are seeking to become a religious interpreter or working in the settings of religion, that your heart needs to be into it? I know that can be hard. Make sure that, you're working in a church setting, but you have to have that heartfelt attitude, even if it's not a religious setting. But if you have the heart for it, that you will go and interpret faithfully, whether you agree or disagree with what's being said. And again, it's just having your heart into it. That can be quite challenging, especially in religious settings. It can be. So I just think it's important that you are not like, well, I'm just like interpreting for somebody in the store just to help them find something. It's not like that. It's much different. So yeah, that's my advice. One other thing I want to add, for those who are watching and maybe a student or somebody who's interested in becoming an interpreter, would you mind like mentoring them? Oh, sure. We'll be sure to put your information there so that somebody might be able to come to the church and maybe work with you. I think that would be a great experience for them. Maybe you becoming the mentor as the church lady. Sure, sure. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for taking the time to come here and do this, to give us all of your experience and sharing. It's been wonderful. And boy, you really have a lot of information. You did a great job, and I know you have done a great job interpreting. For my listening audience and reading audience, if you want to become an interpreter and work in those settings or whatever, please contact Deborah or even myself. We will be most happy to give you the information on how to get started. Again, Deborah, I want to thank you. I want to thank my audience as well. Have a good day.